So I've been working on the book. I've been writing a book. Shit happens, but you can't get stuck in it. And I started writing this book some years ago, and I would write it, put it down, write some more, put it down. And it's funny because in 2020, so many things happened. And I talk about it a little bit in the book, but it was so crazy in 2020 with the pandemic and how it impacted my life indirectly in so many different ways. And so it was so funny when I was thinking about my book, and I was like, you know what? This is a time for me to pick the book back up and do some more writing, about this book because the shit happens. Exactly what it's taught. Shit happens. Serious, hurtful incidents of trauma happen, but you can't get stuck in it. And so when I decided to write the book, and even not too late when I picked it back up. So let me back up a little bit. So when I started writing this book, I wasn't having any visual issues. No vision loss. My eyes were fine. They were perfect, as far as I knew. So I wasn't having any kind of vision loss, any problems or anything like that with my vision. And so that's when I put it down. As part of my writing process. I write it, then kind of put it down, let it simmer, come back to it, read again, review it, write some more, because my mind is constantly thinking about it, going through and what needs to be changed about it, what do I really want to write about it, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what was going on in the process. So at that time, I had probably put the book down and wasn't, I said, you know what, it's not ready. So I'm going to put the book down and come back to it when it's ready because I can't really figure out exactly what I want to do with this book, how I wanted to come across and impact people's lives. And so I put it down. The last thing I did a cover. I did this cover for the book, something similar. It was very similar to this, a little bit different. And I did a cover, started seeing I was going to get ready to put it out, and I didn't. I paused on it. And so pandemic happened, goes through, and around 2020 is when I was diagnosed and started having issues with my eyes. And so and then some other things happened, that were traumatic in my life. And I was indirectly, affected by some things too. And so all these things are going. So in that time period, I picked the book back up. Trauma's happening, things have happened. Let me review it again and see where I was at, where I was going with it. And then by that time, I had a different perspective, right? My perspective about the book had changed. What I wanted it to accomplish had changed. How I wanted to impact people's lives had changed. Because trauma looked different, for me. I was seeing trauma through a different lens, right? Pun intended, and so it was different. So I picked it back up and started revising it again. And remind you, when I started writing this book, I started writing in a journal because that's usually part of my writing process. I write in my journal, and then I go from my journal to typing it up. When I get to the point where I feel like I got a lot of meat in the potatoes, I start typing it up, right? And so um, I was going through a little bit of process with my eyes. So in 2021, I started dictating it onto my iPad. And mind you, I've been writing this book for some years. So pieces of this book were in different places. Some was in a hard copy, right? That I had put down. Some was in my phone, in my notes. Then I had it in my phone in two different places in my notes. So it was really crazy. And so it's really funny. It was almost two different books, right? That I had written and brought it together, to make one by the time I really got back serious about writing. So I'll go through all my things with my vision. And at that time, of course, I'm not writing anything. I'm not writing in my journals. I'm not doing anything. I'm pretty much shut down from writing at that point. Besides doing some creative things like planners or what have you. But I'm not writing and I'm not blogging or anything like that. I'm podcasting mostly. And so when I picked the book back up, after in 2024 and 25, my vision loss had taken a turn for the worse. The worse that it had gone, and everything. And so, um, when I was coming out of my the grief process and getting back into my life and what I wanted to do, what things were going to look like for me, career wise, business wise, personal life, everything. And I said, it's time to finish the book. Shit happens, but you can't get stuck in it because a lot of shit had happened in my life between the time I stopped writing it until 24, 25, right? And I said, it's time to do it. And so I picked it back up and started writing again. And well, I said that very loosely because by that time I'm completely blind in my right eye. And my left eye has taken a steep turn for the worse, and it's getting progressively worse. So yeah, I had a bright idea, a great idea. I'm going to start writing again and pick my book up and I'm going to finish it. It's time. 2025 is a year I'm going to finish this book that I've been holding on to. And I started and I couldn't see anything really, right? And my process, my understanding, my perspective as an author, as a writer, because I've written 2 other books, 3 or 4 other books, but whatever. And I realized I didn't know how to write. I didn't know how I was going to finish this project being visually impaired. That was something I hadn't thought about, I hadn't planned. It was a great idea. And I told myself, yeah, that was a great idea, Yashima. But how the hell are you going to write? And that's really what I thought and I had in my mind. And so I got an immediate funk. I felt so bad and I was frustrated because, like I said, the book was in different places. It was in my phone, in my notes in 2 different places. I had 2 different introductions. I had different parts of the book written in different places in my notes. And so I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to do this visually impaired with minimal vision? Get this book from here to there. Where's the hard copy? At this point, I have changed from a Windows computer to a Mac computer for the accessibility. The book is somewhere. I don't know where the hard copy of the book is at. And so I have my husband going on this wild goose chase trying to find my book. Please. I started it and it's so hard. This is so difficult for me. And so I'm trying to give myself a head start and a good fighting chance of finishing this book. And so I hit a wall and I was so frustrated and upset and sad about it because I didn't know how to start at all. And so I think I was just looking at some things on YouTube was when I was in my research stage trying to figure out how to live um, my life as a visually impaired person. What adaptive tools are out there? What's out there that can help me and get past the mental block that I was visually impaired now. I had to get past that block in order for me to continue to write. I had all the stuff in me and I was ready. I had all the information, all the tools, all the jewels and gems that's floating around in my head and my heart that I need to put on paper. And I just, and I was kind of stuck because I didn't have the tools at the time I didn't know how to work my Mac. I didn't know anything about having any accessible tools at the time. And so it was really nuts. It's been a hell of a ride, getting to this book, trying to finish this book as a visually impaired person, being legally blind. It's been a ride. It's been a joy because as I started writing, my husband found the manuscript. We found the hard copy of the manuscript so I could continue. I could still type. I'm a great typer, without, I don't peck. I type like this. And so I'm a great typer. And so I needed to be able to type on Microsoft Word in order to copy and paste all the pieces of my book together so it came together into to an editable process where I can give it to somebody to edit. And so I was able to do that and it was crazy. And then and so I was so excited, to really write it. And even a part in my book I added in The one part I think that really put the icing on the cake for the book is to add the personal stories. I don't remember if you saw my other video, but I talked about why I wrote this book and what I wanted it to be in the beginning. But, you know, as I started writing it and going through it, I said, wait a minute, I'm talking about trauma. I'm talking about all these things that are happening to people. Do people even know that they're victims or survivors of trauma? I know that we always think that, trauma is the big things, right? All these horrible, big things that happen on television and we see on the 6 o'clock news, but that's not all the trauma. I'm talking about the trauma that happens in our everyday life, our childhood, our young adulthood, our adulthood that we have to learn how to process. But sometimes we have to even figure out and understand what it is. And so, again, another shift in my book, and that's a part of my writing process. That's why I never really hurry up and get things out unless it's something simple like talking about parenting or motherhood, something simple, but when it's complex and deep like this and I'm trying to really transform someone's life, um, my manuscripts go through a few processes and my book morphed into so many things in 2025. I thought I was going to have this book done, but I had everything together. Oh, I already have it all done. I had all this, so much manuscript written that I thought that I was going to get this book out very quickly. But as I began to write it, and then the words start flowing to the page and it starts to form, and what I wanted it to be, it started changing. And so I was like, wow, okay. And so it took me till now to really get it to the point that I said, it's ready. It's a piece of my work that I can say I'm proud of. And I want people to read it. I'm excited for you to read it. These pages, and it's just a little thing, you know. This book was not big, and guess what? First, I'm going to say this. This is the first book of a series of 4. So this is going to be called the Rise series, and this is the first book in that 4-part book series. I think I'm saying that right. Because I just couldn't put everything about trauma and experiences of it in the layers of trauma in just one little book. One thing about my writing style is that I write self-help books and I write them raw, relatable and everything. And I want people to be able to read it, to digest it, to get it. And so putting all parts of the book in one book would have been, I felt, overwhelming and too much for someone going through it. So the Rise series is going to take you on a journey about trauma and healing and resilience and thriving after all the fact. Because with trauma, it's more than just surviving. We have to learn and be able to get through and survive what we've been through, but ultimately thrive in spite of it. And so this is only the first book in the series of 4 books that's going to be coming out in, no, all 4 are not coming out this year. But I plan on completing the series next year, 2026. 4 books. I've already started writing the second book in the series. Okay, so I'm so excited about that. And it's just gonna be good because I'm taking you on a journey from the learning about the trauma to dealing with the trauma to healing from the trauma to um thriving and rebuilding your life from the trauma to talking about, not passing the trauma on to our own offspring and our children and our generations to come after us. And so this has been a ride. I just wanted to talk about it in this video. And I know it's kind of been a little bit of a long video, but it's also just to let you know about me writing this book and what it's about. But I also did this video for people who are visually impaired, who are blind, And shout out to Molly Burke because she was so inspiring for me in terms of getting to the this book. And she was talking about her book writing journey and how she wrote she's writing her memoir and everything, talking about it. And she's talking about her writing process and how she did an audio book and everything, and all the neat things she did with her book to make sure that it was accessible for the visually impaired community. So shout out to her. I love, watching her videos about writing because it's something else. And a lot of you out there who wants to write about your story and tell about your journey and things, and you absolutely should do it. And so I wanted to get on here and talk about it on my Beyond the Blur page. We talk about things, for the visually impaired community, and share my story and my journey of writing. It has not been an easy process. It is not an easy process, but I do believe, once you find your writing method, and the tools that help you write and flow through the process, your writing process, and you find that what gets you going through the process, it gets easier because now I found my sweet spot. I know what works, what doesn't work, what tools work for me, what don't work for me. I know that Microsoft Word and being able to have the dark mode on my screen, that's where I have to be. I have to live in that zone because trying to look at screens that are white and bright, that ain't my life no more. Can't do it. So I do believe that once you find your flow in your writing process and get together the tools that are going to help you, you can do it, whether you're visually impaired or not. You can do it. So thanks for listening. Thanks for joining me on my channel. If any of this was helpful, please like and share. And definitely click that little bell so you know when I'm going to be posting videos, and definitely share this with people who are in the visually impaired community. And I also I have a hard copy, and I'm going to be having both ebook copies on my website. The hard copies will be available on Amazon, and my book's going to be released on November 17th. It's already ready. Everything's ready. I'm waiting for my author copies to come in the mail. Woo, so exciting. So, and it'll be available on November 17th. And I'm also looking for some ARC readers if anybody's available and want to read my self-help book. It's an easy read. It's quick. My aunt read it for me and she read it in like a day and a half. Really, seriously. And she's 80 years old, so stop playing. And so it's going to be released, very soon here. And I also have hard copy and ebook copy in large print. Okay, just for our visually impaired people who can still read the hard copy, I got that for large print. And for those of us who can view the accessible reader, the screen reader and everything, I got that. I have it for you in ebook form. So excited. If you read it, if you buy it and read it, let me know what you think about it, please. It's very important because it's going to be very important as I go to the next series. What is it that you're looking for? What would you expect me to write after reading this book? What do you need me to write after taking you on this journey? The first book in the series, in the Rise series. So take care. Toodles. Good talking to you. Talk to you soon.